We're continuing to follow breaking news out of the UK this morning.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has agreed to finally resign. Johnson had rejected calls by his cabinet to step down in the wake of various ethics scandals. He gave in, though, after more than 50 ministers quit his government and told him to go. It was not immediately clear whether Johnson will stay in office while the Conservative Party chooses a new leader who will replace him as Prime Minister.
Now, London's mayor isn't mincing words following news that Johnson is stepping down. Sadiq Khan tweeting, "This has been one of the most shameful sagas in the history of British politics. Boris Johnson has presided over a government defined by lies, sleaze, an utter lack of integrity, unlawful behavior, incompetence, and a damaging culture of impunity in office." So for more, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson agreeing to step down. We're joined live this morning by CTV's Daniel Hamamdjian in London. Daniel, what a tumultuous week, month, maybe even year in British politics.
Yeah, British politics tend to be theatrical and dramatic, but even this is off the charts. The past 48 hours have been unpredictable, I'd say would be an understatement. Boris Johnson is still in there, perhaps tweaking and refining his speech. The podium, last I checked, is not yet out, but we are expecting him outside number 10 Downing Street to deliver his speech to resign before the nation. But he is going to be doing so, kicking and screaming, because even yesterday, after dozens and dozens of resignations, more than any other prime minister in the UK has suffered, even after a delegation of senior cabinet members, some of whom were his allies, some of whom he had just appointed, went in there to tell him, your time's up, you have to step down. And still, he said no. But perhaps it's a good night's sleep, who knows? But he woke up this morning, we all woke up this morning, and within a few hours, there was word that he was in fact going to resign.
Wow. Okay, Danielle, lots happening. So we know that 50 of his ministers kind of revolted by stepping, saying we're going to go. How many ministers does he have left? And if he does continue to stay on, let's say through the fall or something, who's going to help him run his government?
So, and that's the question. So there were two senior cabinet ministers. The rest have been junior ministers or aides. And that's the question. There are so many vacancies now that he cannot run his government. And so he perhaps would like to stay throughout the summer until there is a new leader voted by the party who will be ready to take over in the fall. But very few people, it seems, not just the opposition, but even those in his own parliamentary party want to see him stay on. They would much rather he step down immediately, allow the deputy prime minister to take over. But again, this is Boris Johnson we're talking about. So the rational and dignified way may not be his way, if I can be so blunt. And so we'll see what he says in the next hour or so. I can tell you, every media organization in this city is behind me. There are hundreds of people outside Downing Street behind the gates. So it is really a moment in history.
And Danielle, London's media market is, of course, legendary. And I know the tabloids, in fact, all the headlines are really having kind of a field day with this, effectively because of what Boris Johnson, his personality, what he's been like, sometimes clownish, sort of never really standing down to anything. So I'm sure it's quite a scene over there.
I mean, he's known for his bravado in the House of Commons, for his sense of humor, and that's what a lot of people who voted for him find endearing in him. But for the ministers who have resigned, enough was enough. There has been scandal after scandal. Let's start with Partygate behind me, the parties that were held here at the height of the pandemic, when those behind this door were telling the nation, don't do this and don't do that, and you can't meet with your neighbor. Well, they were holding parties amongst themselves. And so the health minister who resigned 48 hours ago said yesterday in the House, you asked us to go out and repeat these lines, assuring us that this was true, when it turns out it wasn't. And so there's only so much they can take. And it was a question for this minister of integrity versus loyalty. And in the end, he said he didn't come into Parliament to be someone, but to do something. And that was ultimately the reason why he decided to step down. But more than 50 now resignations, so many vacancies. It is practically impossible to run a government with so many vacancies.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, CTV's Daniel Hamamdjian live for us outside of 10 Downing Street in London. Thank you.